Hola a todos, buenos días. Bienvenidos al segundo día de pláticas, charlas de PyCon Latam 2021. Muchas gracias a todos los que se conectaron ayer, que nos acompañaron todo el día, o que dejaron comentarios, que participaron en Twitter. Les agradecemos el apoyo. Bueno, ayer toda la dinámica que estuvo sucediendo en la plataforma era visitar perfiles de los demás asistentes, visitar sponsors, hacer todas esas actividades, pueden recaudar puntos. Y ayer se otorgaron los primeros premios. Les quiero anunciar que hoy en la mañana se reiniciaron todos los puntos, por lo que estamos todos en igualdad de circunstancias. Es el momento de seguir colaborando, de seguir participando. Desafortunadamente, las personas a las que se les otorgó premio ayer no podrán participar este día, solo para que todo el mundo tengamos la misma oportunidad. Cualquier cosa, les recuerdo que tenemos un código de conducta, está pegado en el chat, me gustaría que todo el mundo pudiera revisarlo. Sigan compartiendo todos los pantallazos, sus citas que les gustaron de las presentaciones, todo en Twitter con el hashtag oficial, que es PyConLatam 2021. Síganos en Twitter si no lo hacen. Pues creo que es todo. Ahora me toca presentar a mí, a Carol Willing. Ella pues es alguien muy importante dentro de la comunidad, no solo Python, sino hacia las PyLadies. Ella está como parte del consejo de la PCF, que es quien decide el lenguaje hacia dónde va. Siempre nos ha apoyado, le agradecemos muchísimo su tiempo, tiene cosas muy importantes que decir. El nombre de su plática es The People's Program Language, que significa que Python quiere ser como ese lenguaje para todos. Entonces, sin más, quisiera invitar a Carol. Hey, Carol.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Just a second, olvidé mencionar que por problemas de la plataforma no hay traducción disponible en este momento para la charla de Carol. Posteriormente vamos a ver qué podemos hacer para tener esos subtítulos. Thank you, Carol. So, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, thank you very much for your support, and I'll leave you to the stage.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am really happy to be talking with you today. I wish we were all in person, but I'm glad that we're gathering virtually. I'm very sorry, I do not speak but un poquito español, so this will be in English. If you go to speakerdeck.com, Willing C, the slides are there, so you might be able to use Google Translate and help it out. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about Python, the people's programming language. So hi, thank you for the lovely introduction. This is Nina with me. Earlier in a couple of years ago when I got the Frank Willison Award for community. And it was a real honor for me because the people of Python really, really touch me in many different ways. I learn from everybody. I'm able to be inspired by many people, and I really appreciate all of you. So, XKCD comic 2021 and 2020 will be years that are different than any other year that we've had in our Python lifetime. And I wanted to start by just recognizing the amazing things that people are doing despite the challenges. And I'm sharing this particular article from Vanessa Socket about remote software engineering because it talks about the human side of working remotely and being in this time that we are. So I do encourage you to check it out. There's a lot of really great tips in it. And, you know, be safe in 2021 and beyond, and use your friends, family to support you. So Python, two snakes, two pythons. Today, we're going to talk about why Python's the people's programming language. So one of the snakes, one of the pythons, is actually the language itself. The fact that we can get things done simply and elegantly in a language that's easy to read is really powerful, and it serves us in so many different ways. And the great complement to that is community. The people around us, the people that we're creating for, the people who are using our tools and projects, and also our peers. So together, they are more powerful than separated. And many of you have probably heard the came for the language, stayed for the community. And I know in my case, it's very, very true. So let's take a look first at the language. The language, CPython, as we call it, is something that we're gathered around here for today. And one of the things I am most excited about as a steering council member, we've been working on this for the last 3 years, is to have a developer in residence. And one of the core developers, Lukasz Langa, he is the first developer in residence. And really what he does is he helps make everybody's developer experience better and quicker. And there are some links to a blog post that the PSF did about him. He's got an ongoing blog about the work he's doing. And right now, there is a Talk Python to Me episode where Lukasz shares his excitement and thoughts, and it's a great talk. You should check it out. So this is the Python, or some of the Python core team in earlier days in London when we were able to meet in person. And we're largely volunteers. We work as we're able to on the things that we have expertise in. And without these people, the language would not grow and flourish. In particular, what we have coming up is release 3.10. Pablo Salgado, our very friendly release manager, is preparing for later this fall a Python 3.10 release. Pattern matching is one of the big things. Deprecating distutils is another. There are several programming improvements and typing improvements. One of the things that I'm most happy about is some of the work that Pablo did to make error messages, tracebacks much clearer and give us better debugging. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there as well that help make the language faster, more robust, and nicer to use. So back at PyCon, the Python Steering Council shared many of our thoughts about this upcoming 2021. And the 5-member Steering Council is responsible for guiding the direction of the language and also the community around Python core development. And I've been very honored to serve on 3 terms. We are elected by the other core developers, and I'm really excited and looking forward to who will be on the next committee, steering council. We change after each release, and I am going back to teaching, mentoring, so I will be stepping down, but I will be definitely around and doing Python things as well. One of the things the steering council does is reviews all the many PEPs, which is the Python enhancement proposals that people from the community have submitted about changes that they'd like to see in the language, processes around core development. And Some of you earlier this year might have seen there was a controversy about a PEP that changed the way we did some typing stuff, and it was going to impact Pydantic, Fast API, and probably others, because it was changing some of the dynamic aspects of typing. And if you're a library maintainer, I highly encourage you to glance over the PEPs from time to time and read about the proposed changes, because these changes may impact your particular project. We are trying to reach out as best we can to folks to make sure that they know when there's a PEP that's going to change things, but I do think it's helpful to understand at least what's in the next release. So as we look at Python today, some people think Python is really fast in terms of performance, and that's the performance when you're creating code. It can be a really efficient language for writing the code, sharing the code, reading the code. And today we have some optimization stuff that's been done with CPython and some tools that help you optimize certain sections of your code. Should you be doing some scientific things or financial things that require quicker responsiveness, Python and Numba are two wonderful projects that help us speed up our underlying Python code, because they use C, C++ in part of their code. But I'm very excited about the future. At the Python Language Summit, which we had earlier this year, we heard some talks from different folks, in particular, Dino from Facebook and Instagram, and the work that they're doing to speed up Python. Google is continuing to do work on speeding up Python. But interestingly, Guido and now a small team of folks are growing at Microsoft, and their sole purpose is to speed up the performance of the actual runtime. So it's exciting stuff. There's lots of changes going on into the code base for release 3.11. So do check it out and do keep up to date on what's going on. So we've talked about the language itself, but the language, Python, has some batteries included, but we also have a rich ecosystem of packages and libraries that people can get from PyPI or Conda Forge. And it's really our secret sauce of what makes Python great, is all these different packages and libraries. So I want to talk about a few of them this morning, and perhaps highlight some that you might not have heard about, and recognize some changes that are going on in other languages. So we have a lot of web frameworks, and traditionally we have some more mature. Django, Flask, and Pyramid have been sort of the big three in web development. Django has been consistently moving forward and adding new things, staying up to date. It's really a pleasure to use. And, I think some people have been adding things like Tailwind CSS used with Django adds like a very powerful combination. Flask recently went to, or is in the process of going to their 2.0 release. And as a complement to Flask, there's also a project called Quart. And that is actually the same, it's built in the same style as Flask, but has better async and ASGI support. And if you're using WebSockets or need async, it's a project that you might want to check out, because it has the goodness of Flask plus a few other things. And then Pyramid, Pyramid is what a bunch of projects in the Python software world uses, and their documentation has really improved tremendously, and their 2.0 release looks like it has some really interesting things coming down the road as well. But then there's also the newcomers in web and frameworks, and some of you may have heard or even used Pydantic and FastAPI. FastAPI and Pydantic combines the use of typing in order to make our web development experience easier to maintain, easier to read, and faster. And so it has really been my pleasure to be working with Pydantic and FastAPI for the past year with my own team at Notable. And I asked my team, because they're always raving about FastAPI, what they thought that was really great about it. Some people said, it's a 10 out of 10, it's pretty, it's rigorous when you need it to be, but gets out of your way when you don't need that rigor. And basically, it's productive to use, and it's a joy to code with. And one of the nice things that FastAPI does is it will document your endpoints for your API and your functions if you use doc strings, which is really nice. And Sebastian, who is the maintainer of FastAPI, recently, like 3 days ago, probably 5 days ago at this point, released SQL model, which I expect will be a really popular project down the road. It takes some of the great stuff about SQL alchemy and makes it easier to use, and it integrates well with FastAPI. So I do encourage you to check it out. It's still in early days, but from everything I've heard, it's really stable, and it looks like it's getting some phenomenal growth even over the first few days with 3,000 stars on GitHub already. PyPI and pip have gone through a lot of growth since I started in Python 10 years ago or so. And I think it's kind of cool to see how much volume and how many projects they are supporting and dealing with. It's really quite amazing, and there's blog posts about it on the Python website. If you want to know more about what's going on with all the packages that are in PyPI, there is a website that lets you look up the top PyPI packages, which is really kind of handy. The Packaging Authority has put together a number of guides, including how to package your project with pip, and has a way to use Google's BigQuery to do basically research or queries on the PyPI analytics, and in a very easy way, and it's very well written. Somebody has also put together pip info, which lets you use Google's BigQuery, but from a command line tool. So in this particular case, I ran pip info for the past 90 days and what were the top projects, and I printed them out, and URL 3 had 478 million downloads in that time. That's a lot of people working with Python, a lot of people doing amazing things, and looking at this list of projects, there's something I know we use every day, but there are many more, and you can also find out about your own project if you're a maintainer, so it's pretty cool stuff. For those of you that are doing work with science or data science, Conda Forge is another packaging ecosystem, and it's maintained by community and gives access to a lot of the projects that we typically use in science and data science, and many, many, many more. There's over 3,700 projects at this point on Conda Forge. During most of 2020, they had 100 million downloads per month. And as of the middle of last year, they had over 2 billion all-time downloads. And I can remember, gosh, probably 6 years ago was when Conda Forge was starting. And it was just a little baby project. But now it's grown to, millions of downloads per month per project. And one of the new things in the Conda Forge ecosystem is a project called Grayskull. So if you're a maintainer and you've released something on PyPI and you want to then release it on Conda Forge, you can use this command line tool, and it really greatly simplifies it. You don't have to understand everything about the YAML configuration for Conda Forge. You merely put the command in and it spits back a YAML file that you can then use and submit for your package to be on Conda Forge. Data science and science is something that is really near and dear to my heart, and Python has grown tremendously in the past 10 years. We have some of the foundational projects like NumPy, SciPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, and IPython sort of were all started in that same decade of the 2000s. And then Jupyter notebooks, JupyterHub, things like that are relatively new projects in the last, let's say, 8 years or so. And the phenomenal growth we had there really, in many ways, was driven both by science and data science and also education. So I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to watch these ecosystems grow. And one of the things as a result of that growth is we have a lot of choices of tools and packages that we didn't have in the early days. And I want to highlight just a few of them right now. PyJanitor is a project that Eric Ma maintains. If you're using Pandas, it helps you manipulate the data frames in a way that makes data cleaning, data munging far simpler and far more consistent. So I encourage you to check that out. FastAI, if you're interested in deep learning and even want to know more about deep learning and learn about it, they have wonderful resources and have really committed to making these materials free and open for all. Napari, PyDeck, good stuff within visualization. And one of my favorite projects over the last several years is Simon Wilson's Dataset. And Dataset lets you very easily take a SQLite database and serve it as a web service, and you can sort and filter, and it's really a great way to make data sets accessible to the community quick and easily, and there are many plugins for it. It's just a great project. I encourage you to check it out. Python has a long history in operations and DevOps, and we're also seeing some really strong growth in projects like Airflow and Dask. And Spotify has a nice batch processing pipeline called Luigi. So do check out, if you're working with DevOps in the data world, some of the different pipeline options that exist using Python. Yesterday, there was an amazing talk about documentation at PyLadies, and I encourage you to go back and watch that talk because it was really wonderful. But these are some of the enhancements that have happened in our documentation ecosystem. One of the most amazing things is MIST, which lets us use Markdown and restructured text and notebooks far easier within Sphinx. Pregen and others have been working on new mobile responsive themes for Sphinx, and we've started to use some of those within the core Python community. There's also another alternative called MakeDocs, and the material theme is beautiful, well-maintained, and the documentation's great. And Read the Docs, who's built such an amazing community around documentation in Python, has been rolling out some really nice enhancements and usability things, and have upped their game on their own documentation. So do check that out as well. But definitely start with the talk that was given yesterday. And Python gets used in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that I love is how it's come in the last 5 years, really a key language within hardware and education. And with the introduction of MicroPython, which CircuitPython is based upon, the CircuitPython ecosystem has great community management, lots of tutorials, and I encourage you to check it out. And in the Raspberry Pi Foundation, which has gotten a lot of folks interested in computing in both Linux and Python, they now have a compact keyboard that embeds a Raspberry Pi inside it, so that you don't have to have like everything on your desk with cables coming from or into the Raspberry Pi. So you might want to check that one out. And perhaps my favorite part of the Python ecosystem is the people, the organizations that are built around people, and the community itself. This past 2 years has really shown the strength of Python community globally. And I know I'm very honored to be a small part of that. Some of you may know Lorena Mesa. She is energy times 100, super person that has done a great deal along with Naomi Cedar to spread Pythons in Latin America, exposure within the Python Software Foundation. And a stat that I learned is that the meetups, we have over 83 groups and 120,000 members. And there's a link at the bottom to the annual reports that they've been doing. So it lets you learn lots of additional details about the work that the Python Software Foundation is doing. Things like providing grants for conferences across the world, educational events, and also helping us run PyCon, which has been virtual the past 2 years. And one of the things that makes me a little sad, but also happy for her, is that Eva is leaving the Python Software Foundation at the end of the year. She gave us lots of time to help recruit another director of the Python Software Foundation. I can't say enough about her work ethic, her friendliness, her ability to get things done. The past 10 years in Python, particularly with the Software Foundation, we've seen huge growth. And I'm sure she will not be a stranger after 2021, but I did want to take a moment to thank her for all the work that she has done. And I'm sure there will be more celebrations as we get closer to the end of the year to really recognize the huge impact she's had on our ecosystem. One of the things I also want to point out is the PSF now has a diversity and inclusion work group. And I think it's super cool that they are focused on geographical diversity as their first thing. And these are some of the initial members of that work group. Katya is one, Deborah, another, let's see what else, Manuel, you know, from the Latin America, South America community, and they're wonderful stewards for the geographic areas south of us. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this work group. It's a lot of really wonderful people who have a great passion for community and people, so it should be a really interesting thing to watch. PyLadies, which is one of the places I got my starts in Python, has a new governance model. There is now a global council with representation from across the world. And what we've seen is we have chapters in so many places for PyLadies that I thought the map was kind of interesting to see. We don't have Antarctica yet, but I think that's probably more because it's cold and not too many people. Earlier this year, there was a really cool all-day event for International Women's Day with PyLadies, which had 3 mini conferences that spanned the globe and the time that we had together. And those talks are also fabulous. If you haven't seen them, do check them out. There's some really great content there as well. Conferences and meetups have really rallied in COVID to move to a virtual model. As much as I wish that I could be with all of you in person at PyLATM, I'm super happy that you are gathering and sharing your knowledge of Python with each other now. There are other things like Django Girls. One of the things, if you're new to the Python community, you may not realize, but most of the conferences have all of their tutorials and talks free on YouTube. And they're a great resource for new and upcoming libraries and how also to use old favorites even better. The Carpentries has grown over the last 10 years to provide free open source lessons that can be then taught for data, for the library folks, and you know, scientists in general. So do check out all of their materials are open sourced as well. I think for me personally, the friends that I have made along the way, like Amanda, Christian, Tanya, I think many of you know, and Nina, has been more than I could have ever imagined. It is who I go to when I don't know the answer to questions. It's who I go to if I'm discouraged or frustrated. And also, they're who I go to celebrate the successes and the things in the Python ecosystem that bring me joy. And I'm really, really grateful that I have made such friendships and can't wait to see everyone in person again. So to wrap up, Python and our 2 snakes of language and community really together are a powerful combination, as well as the ecosystem around the language. So what can you do? Well, recognize that Python's a powerful language. Use what you need to get your projects done, and don't worry too much about the rest. You can learn it when and if you have a need for it. So I highly recommend, if you're new to Python, to just start coding and ask a friend what's the best way to get started. I know in the San Diego area, that helped me a lot. So take that powerful language, combine it with our active and vibrant community who on a daily basis really inspires me with the effort and talent that is in this community. And together, we can take the Python programming language and make it the people's language, and also change the world together, because there's a lot of things in the world, and our community with our language can do a lot to make everyone's lives better. So thank you for having me here. I want everybody to take care and be safe. And until I'm able to go to a PyLatam in person, I hope this has provided you some insights into some things you might want to look at and try. And also congratulate yourself for bringing together such an amazing language and community. Thank you.
Carol, thank you very much. You gave us a lot of tools and a lot of ways to approach the community. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It was my honor. I don't know if we have time for questions, or if there are any questions.
I haven't seen any questions here, but no, it's a lot of people telling their experience, but no questions right now.
Perfect.
So,
perfect.
I also see that in your friends slide, you have Tanya alert. She keynoted for us.
Yes.
And we approached Nina to maybe keynote, so maybe
yes,
all the people in that picture can be keynotes for Python.
Keynotes at one time.
Picture. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Tanya Allard, she's amazing. She is now one of the co-directors of Quantsite Labs, which is really doing great work in open source science tools. And, you know, she's just energy, and, you know, things like the, you know, the sprints that people, mentored sprints that let people get started with Python. So really, really awesome. And everybody here is doing great work. And kudos to all of the organizers of PyLat. You've done a wonderful job, and I'm so happy to have been a part of it.
Thank you very much. And we approached you like 2 years ago, so
yes,
it was long overdue, but it finally happened. So thanks again.
You are very welcome. And if I can do anything for anyone, please don't hesitate to ask. For the PyLadies out in the crowd, I do have office hours each week that you can schedule with me. So if you get stumped on something, or just need, you know, a friendly, yeah, you're doing great work, I'm happy to do that. So thank you.
And the best way to contact you is by email, Twitter?
Twitter is probably a good way. I get a lot of email, so I'm not the best with email.
Okay.
But, you know, and GitHub is also a great way. Just mention me, and I will eventually see it in the list of stuff that, you know, because I do open GitHub every day. I don't open a Twitter or email every day. So.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And if you are around in the platform the rest of the day, can people reach out to you there?
Absolutely. I will be sort of on and off. I'm going to eat my breakfast now. And but I did watch several of the talks yesterday. And even though I didn't necessarily understand them because they were in Spanish, but I actually learned a lot from the slides. So I'm looking forward to seeing some more today as well. You had really great topics.
Yeah, the community is very growing into the topics that they want to explore, and they're not shy about sharing the knowledge. So we're very grateful to them too.
Yeah, and it was great to see a talk on pattern matching too. That was fabulous. something new coming in Python. So
exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do have a small question. If you have time, we have around 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And
totally
Alan asked, which are the best tools for data science that you prefer right now?
You know, personally, the tools that I prefer are some of the tried and true ones. So, you know, NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib to some degree, also Seaborn I actually like, and Plotly also. For 3D visualization, IPyVolume and Napari. For machine learning, I always start with scikit-learn, and then occasionally I will use PyTorch, but most of the work that I do, I'm able to get done with scikit-learn. If I was probably doing something for the first time, maybe FastAPI. And then, you know, the community itself and looking at examples of what other people have done, to me, has been super valuable. And then, of course, the Jupyter Notebook.
Right.
But yeah, so those are what I would start using. But there's more and more, well, and PyJanitor I use all the time. So, you know, to clean up my messy data at the start. But there's so many tools that are specific to certain areas. I would say, again, you know, use what you feel comfortable with. Understand what your tools are doing. I think in data science, that's really important. And really looking at your underlying data and always asking yourself, okay, this is what the program tells me, but does this make logical sense in terms of the people that are part of that data? You know, so yeah, great question though.
All right. Yeah, I really like the fact that you mentioned that approaching the code via a community, because the tools are out there, but picking the ones right for you, it's based on other people's experience and applying to your code. It's the best way to do it.
Absolutely. And we have on YouTube some great data science tutorials.
Right.
You know, choose the ones probably that have the most views. That's probably a good indicator.
Yes.
And also the carpentries, all of their lessons are open sourced and you know, are great for data science and also learning things like command line and some Linux commands.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much. I'll just
do very welcome.
Like a closing in Spanish and we'll be done. Gracias a todos por participar. Vamos a tener un breve descanso y a las 10 empezamos con la siguiente ronda de charlas.